and welcome to Felt Matters, the podcast on all things felting, brought to you by the International Felt Makers Association. And we are your hosts. I'm Vivienne Morpeth, coming to you from sunny Lincolnshire in England.
And I'm Heather Potten in the lovely city of Edinburgh in Scotland. Honestly, I haven't asked you a difficult question, Vivienne. All I have said is, would you like to get started on this episode?
I'd absolutely love to, Heather. And it's,
Season 3.
you know, here we are back in our virtual studio. And of course, last time we met, we were actually in my studio in real time, in real space.
But that's for another episode, that is.
It is, I know. But when I'm looking at you, I'm thinking how nice it was to spend time together.
It was.
But we're going to talk about what we did in another episode and why we did it.
That's right.
But nonetheless, it was great to be in real time together. So back in our virtual studio, and we had the most fascinating conversation. Well, you had the conversation and I was listening in the background and tried to think of intelligent questions to ask. But really, the conversation was with Jeanne Osnas and her daughter Rosemary in Alaska. So they were making a piece with a whole collaboration with adults and children in the school. And Jeanne was artist in residence there. It was based on an inspiration from one of our early podcasts, in fact.
It was indeed. It was the first podcast where I talked about making a rainbow from pre-felts. If you look at the project that Jeanne did with this primary school in Alaska, she saw each class for 1 hour a week for 2 weeks, and that was it. And in order to have that happen and be effective, she had to do an awful lot of planning in advance.
And I think that's it, isn't it? People don't realise all that pre-planning and the preparation that felt makers have to do if they're going to go into a school. I've done lots of teaching with children in schools, and the thing that really comes across is that children just get on with it. And you know, when you teach an adult workshop and you have to explain the theory and the outcomes and then go back to the initial steps and maybe go through the steps just one step at a time, children just launch themselves into it in a kind of abandonment. It's an enthusiasm, and it's incredible because you can just get a lot done in a very short time because you're not having to analyze it and think about it. And you know, as adults, we stand and we stop and we think.
Yes, and we also think about all the things that can go wrong.
Yes.
Probably more often than all the things that can go right.
I had an amazing experience a few years ago. I was teaching children to make felt slippers. And so when I say children, these were actually 13-year-olds. So I thought it'd be really good to work with a whole fleece. So this was a whole class of about 26 children. Wow. And so we washed the fleece, we carded the fleece. This is 45 minutes a week.
What? Gosh, okay. For how long? Then, for a term?
I think it took us about 2 terms to make these slippers.
Right. Oh, okay.
But they washed and carded the fleece. And then they made their patterns around their feet. And then they began to lay it out. And then we hit half term. So half term, all of the slippers were put away, stacked in this big plastic tub. And when I came back and I did that teacher thing, whereas you go and you check the work and you to prepare for the lesson so that everything's laid out ready so that children can just arrive through the door and begin working. The slippers had all grown grass and barley seeds and all the rest of it. Because, of course, you know, we're talking about carding and washing and combing, not quite to the sort of, you know, professional felt maker standard. And I had to pluck all this grass out of their slippers, which are flat wool attached to the plastic resist at this point.
Yeah.
But they'd all sprouted. And I thought, I really I mean, it's hilarious. And this is before, taking photographs of every slightest move. Otherwise I would have had photographs. But I thought I can't really let the children see
Oh,
what's
come
happened to their
on.
slippers.
Oh, no, I think they'd have loved
Because
it.
they had worked so hard to get all these flipping seeds out of, because it was a British fleece, and the fleece was full of seeds, grass, and all sorts of stuff. You know how often sheep are sheared, they're gathered in from the field, and then they're in a barn, and they're sort of given straw and whatnot to lie on. And of course, it all
Yes.
gets into the fleece, and
Oh,
then as
wow.
felt makers, you've got to get it all out again.
That's
So anyway, so that took a bit longer, but eventually they all made these beautiful felt slippers, and I do have a lovely photograph of them all lined up wearing these felt slippers, which they then made. They sewed on kind of like moccasin soles. We got some old leather jackets from charity shops and used the suede side.
I think that's brilliant, and I hope you've got that photograph so we can perhaps put that on Instagram.
Well, I do.
And,
So working with children is just, and of course you get all the energy
mm,
from them as well,
yes,
and so their energy gives you energy, which is perhaps why, in some ways, Jean was able to, because she'd done all this preparation, but really maximise the time
yes,
in the classroom in a way in which we as adults flounder a little bit before we
yes.
get into our
And
groove.
as I say, I do feel that quite often when you go to a workshop, there will be some felt makers that will be perhaps overconfident because they think they know more than they actually do, and you've got people who will underestimate their
Yes,
capabilities, and
of
they'll think, "Oh, well, mine's not as good as yours,"
and they're
etc.
there to hear from you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, I remember when we were talking to Wendy, she did mention that there would be people saying, "But mine's not as good as yours," and that's really not the point, is it?
No, that always makes me smile. I think I've been doing it for donkey's years, and you hope to make exactly the same piece within a
Yeah,
few hours.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think this is a great way to lead into the conversation that we had with Jean and with her daughter Rosemary, and I think one of the things that came out of it for me anyway was that the children were obviously of different ages because it was the whole primary
Yes,
school, which
yes,
I think is incredible, and therefore.
absolutely.
And you got them helping each other as well. You know, people who were less able, those who came in and did extra time just to help those. And I think from that point of view, it
Yes,
was the most incredibly successful collaboration.
really rewarding. And it must
Mm,
have been rewarding for the children taking part and the
absolutely,
adults to
yes.
learn from the children on that occasion.
Indeed. So let's have a listen to that interview. Is she a bossy mum?
Yes.
She
Yes,
bosses you
yes.
around, yeah? She does.
That's
Okay,
what
right.
that's what moms do. Yeah, but you're bossy.
And was she bossy on the project?
Only to me, though. Well, a little to me. She was like, Rosemary, don't go ahead.
Ah,
But then
yeah.
Rosemary ended up being very helpful in helping her
Yeah.
friends. And
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. So I guess what we would like to do is go right back to the very beginning and just ask you, Jean, how did this thing come about, this project that you did?
yeah, so I've been in felting intensively since COVID. And so then when the kids came back to going to public school, we started giving little felted things as teacher gifts. Like it became sort of known that I was a felter. And it's not a very common hobby around here. So it was novel, right? And people were interested, and a couple teachers expressed interest in me and wanting to learn. And so I did a couple just felting opportunities with some of the teachers. And then after the school year ended, I offered a workshop at my house for teachers as a thank you gift if they wanted to come. And then we made flowers, and that was really fun.
Do you want to tell us, our listeners, where you are?
Oh, we're in Anchorage, Alaska.
Okay. It would be very interesting for people to know a bit more because, as you say, felt making isn't a big thing in Anchorage. And why do you think that is?
I think of it as a somewhat up and coming craft in general. I mean, I never heard about it growing up. I was introduced to it. Um, we have a local Waldorf Steiner school. And when my older child, who's 13 now, was a preschooler there, they did a little Easter felting unit for the parents. And I had never heard of felting before. And so we wet felted Easter eggs and needle felted a little chick. And it just blew my mind. And then I didn't do it at all again until COVID. And I don't honestly remember the trigger for why we decided to resume felting. I had both girls at home with me and they were a lot younger. But it just grabbed me and I became really into it and it grew from there. And so periodically, the art teacher, the art program at the school has an opportunity to invite a guest artist to come and do a 2-week residency with the children. There were 364 students enrolled in our elementary school, grades kindergarten through 5th grade. And the teachers and the art teacher were talking about it, and they said, why don't we do a fiber arts unit and have Jeannie come and do it if she'll do it? And so they invited me, and it just happened to be a week or two after I was listening to your first podcast where you were talking about your rainbow. And I just was thinking about a way to teach felting to all these kids.
How many classes were actually involved?
17 classes.
I mean, that's just mind-blowing. It really is.
It is mind-blowing. It is absolutely mind-blowing. So ages 5 through 11.
Okay. And so, Rosemary, how old are you?
I'm 10.
So you're one of the older students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the 4th oldest kid in the class.
Oh, okay. And did you work with other children younger than you, or did you just work with children your own age?
I worked with kids my own age and like in my class, but yeah.
And how big is a class?
My class is 24 students.
That's quite a lot.
That's quite a lot. That's one of the bigger classes, and some of them were smaller.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So did you, Jeannie, when you were organizing this, did you talk to Rosemary about what she thought of it as an idea, or did she not have anything to do with the planning process?
Well, she had to be one of the guinea pigs for...
Okay.
So the art teacher and I got together a couple times to pilot some projects and work out the teaching methodology and make sure that we had the process nailed down to communicate. And so Rosemary and some of her friends had to be guinea pigs. And we had the 2 separate projects. So the older kids, what Rosemary's class, the 4th and 5th graders did was they made flowers.
Mm-hmm.
So we were going through all the steps to exactly work out how we were going to teach these kids how to make flowers. And then it was the younger grades, kindergartners through 3rd graders, who each made a piece of flat felt. They were given a 10 by 12 inch piece of pre-felt and were given of merino fibers and then a bunch of decorative fibers within their assigned color family to make a piece of flat felt. And then they got to cut out a 2 by 7 inch piece bookmark to take home. We punched a hole in it and put a ribbon in the top, and that was their memento. And then we cut up the rest of it into the tile pieces to make those large mosaic pieces.
So when you've got, sorry to interrupt, when you've got children of that age, I mean, the youngest were what, 5?
Yes.
And how did they respond to it? Was it the color that got them, or was it the working with your hands, or what do you think?
It was definitely the tactile aspects of it. Some kids were really excited about their color choice, and other kids didn't get their first color choice, but nobody really complained about that. They were just completely enthralled by the tactile nature of the entire project. And we jumped in really quickly. My introductory remarks were quite brief. Well, first of all, I only saw each class for 1 hour in each of the 2 weeks. So it'd be 1 hour the first week and 1 hour the second week. So we really had to move at a furious clip to get the work done.
2 hours total with each
child. Yes.
Did they individually roll their pieces as well as
they did
design and lay them out?
Yes, they did all felt making steps. So, and we just had to keep it moving, give a certain amount of time to lay out the merino on top of the pre-felt, and then a certain amount of time to decorate. And then they wet it out. And what we had given them is a 24-inch square of bubble wrap. And so they were able to just fold over the other half of the bubble wrap on top of their project.
Mm-hmm.
and then put soapy water on top of that. And so they rubbed for a few minutes, and then each child brought a towel from home, and we used it to help them roll. They rolled for a few minutes, and then they got to toss their felt, which they were just blown away. They just looked at me like, really? I get to do this? Like, yep. They got to toss their felt. They thought that was, of course, the best. And then they
Yeah.
rinsed several rinsing stations with 5-gallon buckets of water so they could progressively rinse in cleaner and cleaner water. And then
It's kind of like a military operation.
it was very much an assembly line. Well, and the thing that made it a success is that we had lots of volunteers. So our art teacher grew up in Anchorage, and she happened to have 2 aunts who are retired in town, and they were our amazing champion volunteers. They attended nearly every class.
Wow.
Yes, they were our amazing volunteers, and our art teacher's husband was there for most of the process. He was able to take the time to participate, and he was extremely helpful. And then we had several parent volunteers in most classes, and they were absolutely essential to the success of the project.
But that's so wonderful, because I think one of the things that we love about felt making is that it's a very much a community project. And in this case, I mean, in the past, it would have been the whole family making a rug or a carpet. But in this case, you've got the children, you've got the teachers, you've got parents.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing this isn't the only kind of project that you do, but this must have had quite an impact on everybody.
I think so. It was quite an event. We had heard nothing but positive things about the project. People were enthralled by it. Of course, felt making was completely new to nearly all the children and most of the parents. Some of the parents had some needle felting experience, but hadn't experienced wet felting before, so that was new to them. But it was a really fun event.
So what did you like about it, Rosemary? Did you enjoy the whole thing, or were you? Yeah. And what did you? I can't actually see your face now because the sun's come in, and now your face is gone all bright and sunny.
Yeah,
but what did you like about it?
I really liked helping my friends. That was really fun.
Yeah, and did they see you as kind of like the boss that they could come and ask you questions because you knew more than they did?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's quite nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of fun to teach other people as well as learn yourself.
It was very fun to teach my friends.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and in fact, when we were piloting the project at home here before, and Rosemary had just finished doing a flower with me, and then a friend of hers came over, and the friend, of course, wanted to make a flower. And we said, great, you can make a flower too. Let's try it out on you. And Rosemary said, Mom, I will teach her how to do it.
Excellent.
You don't get to teach her. And so Rosemary remembered all the steps, and she did a really good job.
And that is the best way to learn, is to immediately teach somebody else. I mean, did you find that in general that people helped each other out?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah. And Rosemary was able to finish the flower of a friend. So the flowers, they did them in 2 stages. They got halfway through in the first week, and then they had to finish the flower in the second week. And one of Rosemary's good friends was only in attendance for the first week. And so Rosemary finished her friend's flower for her, which was really nice.
That's nice. And am I right in thinking that the idea for the flowers came from another of our well-known felt makers?
So it was a combination of a couple of ideas that I had learned from free YouTube videos. And so Wendy Bailey is, of course, a well-known felt maker and a member of the IFA. And she had a method of doing her flowers where she rolled a merino cord and cut it into pieces to make stamens and bound them with a knot with another strip of merino to become the stem. And I just loved that method. And so that was something that we did incorporate for our flowers for our 4th and 5th graders. And for the body of the flower, it was just a simple circle flower, 6-inch circle flower idea from Living Felt. And of course, other felt makers have circle flowers videos online, right? It's pretty kind of basic introductory flower method.
But it's incredibly versatile and really effective.
Absolutely. Well, and the thing that we were able to do then is that the kids could leave the circle shape to turn into a funnel flower, or we gave them the option of cutting lines in it towards the end of the felt making process to make petals, and then they would really hard after they cut those petal shapes in. And kids chose to do many things. Some of them made 5 or 6 petals, large petals, and then some kids cut in many, many petals, and those looked so interesting. It was really fun to see the diversity of ideas that the kids with.
Yeah. So, Rosemary, what happened to the rainbow? And you didn't just do a rainbow and flowers, did you? You did something else.
We did salmon, right?
We did salmon and seaweed. So that was what happened with that. So in the first week, the kindergartners and the third graders made the piece of felt. And that was all that happened in the first week. And then it was in the second week where these older kids were doing their flowers. And then concurrently, we had a whole table dedicated to the big projects, and each one took a day or two to complete. The big kids didn't really get to participate that much in it. Some of the fifth graders were able to come into the classroom when they had finished their work. They were assisting us with the felt making of the big pieces, and also assisting the little kids with their felt making, which was great. They did that in the first week as well. So the teachers, the fifth grade teachers, would just allow any fifth grader who had finished their work early, who had a little bit of free time, to come back into the art room to help out. So the fifth graders got to help out quite a bit, actually, assisting their younger children, as well as doing rubbing and laying out pieces and assisting with assembling and felting these really large pieces. But the fourth graders, like Rosemary, didn't really get to do a whole lot of that. They didn't have a lot of free time like the fifth graders.
No, but that's great that your older children are working with the younger ones too.
Oh, it was wonderful. And they had so much fun. So I was really happy for them that they got to experience 2 different projects. So they made their own flower, but then they got to come and see how the little kids were going through all the steps to make the flat felt, which was different than making a flower. And then how we were assembling the pieces that we took from the kids' felt to make these larger pieces, because of course there was just so much rubbing.
Yeah, it's a full-on process. I mean,
it was very physical. And so that was happening concurrently while the big kids were finishing their flowers, is that other people were assembling the pieces and rubbing them and rolling.
What's the significance of the salmon?
Well, we live in Alaska, so salmon run in most of our rivers that connect to the ocean, and they are culturally hugely important to Native Alaskans and other people who call Alaska home. And they're culturally iconic, and a lot of people catch them in the summer when they're running and catch them in the ocean. So it's a hugely important thing in Alaska. And of course, they're beautiful and amazing animals, and we're celebrating in their own right.
So, Rosemary, tell me, where can we now see the pieces that you made? Where are they now?
They're in a big glass case next to the office at O'Malley Elementary.
Mm-hmm. And are they going to be there for long? Is it only the kids that can see them, or can other people see them as well?
Everyone can see them, and they're going to stay up there for as long as I will be able to remember, probably.
So is the rainbow lying flat, or have you got it up on the wall?
Right now it's on display. It's on the wall in another glass case along with all of the flowers. And those will only be on display for about a month. The kids get to take their flowers home, of course. I'm not sure what we're going to do with the rainbow. It'll probably be on display somewhere in the school, at least for this year. Our school happens to be home to the French language immersion program. Rosemary is not participating in that program because it's our neighborhood school. So they also have non-French language classes for the neighborhood kids. But the French language program has an auction every year to support it. And so I think the rainbow will probably get auctioned off next year.
Wow. Imagine owning that.
To support that project. But the 2 salmon that we made, as well as the 3 pieces of seaweed, I think will be on permanent display, or at least long-term display. The display case is located very close to a large fish tank where the kids get to hatch salmon eggs every year. Salmon eggs are part of a hatchery program in one of our local rivers. And that's been a long-term science project piloted by one of our third grade teachers. And so the kids are already aware of salmon biology, and they're already engaged with it. And so it's really nice that we have these beautiful, I think they're beautiful.
Yeah, I think they are as well. I think they're incredible.
And they're large. Each salmon is over 1.5 meters long.
The colors are incredible. The shape, they're very beautiful pieces. It's hard to appreciate the scale, but you did send us a photograph of Was it you holding it? Is it you holding it or somebody else?
That was the art teacher's husband was holding it.
Yeah.
That was after we successfully applied foam board to the back of that salmon.
Yeah.
So we were holding it up in victory.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, quite an achievement.
Well, it was kind of the doing the salmon was a bit of an impulsive decision. It was not something that we had initially planned out. We had initially planned on doing multiple rainbows and having a rainbow in each class, which is why we divided the children up approximately evenly with the 6 different rainbow colors that we had available. But after we finished the first rainbow, it was beautiful and wonderful. But we thought maybe we could do a different shape. What about a fish? How about a salmon? And we had enough red and green, which is, of course, the more biologically accurate color set, to do one, and then some leftover green to do the seaweeds. And then we said, well, we have lots of purple, orange, yellow, and blue. Let's do another one. And then we were able to finish the orange and purple salmon. And we have enough yellow and blue, and we've already cut out the black pre-felt shape, which is what we used for the backing, to make a yellow-blue salmon. But we didn't have enough time or energy into the felting unit to complete that. But what we think we'll do is either sometime with the remainder of the school year this year or next year, do a special after-school program for the older children, like 4th and 5th graders, to come and spend an hour after school each day for a week or two to assemble and felt the yellow-blue salmon. And I don't know what will become of it, but
I think that's amazing. And do you think that, Rosemary, would you like to continue felting? I mean, have you got the bug like we have?
I would say I would do other stuff in my life, but I think it would be a cool project to do like every once in a while.
Every once in a while. So you haven't quite got the bug yet, but you enjoyed it nonetheless. Yeah. And it was nice to work with your classmates and your friends.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And how about you, Jeanne? What are you going to do next in the felting world?
just work on my own independent art, I think.
Vivienne, do you have any questions to ask these intrepid
Well.
felters?
I mean, you have talked about it beautifully, and I've got a really strong image in my mind. I mean, it's just lovely to hear you talk about it. It's obviously been such a big event for you as individuals and as the whole school.
Mhm. Yep. And we're very proud that we had something to do with it as well.
Absolutely.
You were inspired, yes. And when the art teacher saw your rainbow, Heather, she was just blown away. She just gasped. She said, "Oh, we should absolutely do that." And I know that you dismiss this idea, but I think that mosaic art technique is truly innovative. Obviously, felt makers repurpose their old pre-felts and felts in lots of different ways, but to use it exclusively as the basis for a larger piece in a mosaic fashion, I don't see very often. So I think it's a bit unique.
Oh, well, I'll take
very
that.
effective, Heather.
Yeah, a bit unique sounds good to me. Well, thank you both very, very much for agreeing to come on the show. And Rosemary, I think you should get out of those pajamas and put some clothes on. Anyway, so thank you very much indeed.
Well, thank you both for the opportunity to talk about it. And thank you again for the inspiration.
Yes.
You're very welcome.
And the mentorship. You were very helpful, Heather. You had some really good suggestions we were able to implement during our felting of our large pieces.
I can't help getting involved. Just butting in.
All right.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye. We hope you enjoyed that. I mean, I feel as though I've experienced it and I've been there in person just from this conversation. It was so lovely to listen to you all, and thank you so much. It's so inspiring, makes me want to go away and do a similar project. Thank you.
Indeed. So thank you very much for listening to the podcast where felt matters. This podcast is brought to you by the education team of the International Feltmakers Association. Conceived, hosted and produced by Vivienne Morpeth and Heather Potten. Editing by Heather Potten. Music by Artie Williams. Graphics by Rafaela Morpeth.
If, like us, you'd like to hear more from our amazing felting community, subscribe at the end of this episode. It helps other creatives to find us, and each episode will drop into your podcast platform for you to enjoy.